At low tide, Runit Island looks almost asleep. The reef lies flat. The palms bend inland. The concrete dome waits near the waterline. A man steps across coral rubble with seawater around his boots. It sounds like a sink draining in a house where nobody lives. Then he sees the crack. Not a dramatic wound. A thin, dark seam across the concrete, filling and emptying with salt air. The island is Runit, in Inuiatak Atoll, where the United States conducted part of its 67 nuclear tests across Bikini and Inuiatak. People nearby call the dome the tomb. The name is plain. It does not ask you to imagine much. It sits there doing that work. Beneath that cracked cap is the cactus crater, packed with more than 120,000 tons of contaminated soil and debris. The crater was not dug by machines. It was opened by a nuclear blast, then later used like a bowl nobody wanted to touch. The cactus test took place in 1958 at the end of the U.S. testing period in the Marshall Islands. There are places where history feels archived. Runit feels buried halfway, with the lid still warm from hands that left quickly. From the late 1970s into 1980, cleanup crews pushed contaminated earth, metal, concrete, and equipment into the crater before capping it. One former Army truck driver, Robert Celestial, told ABC News crews were told it was post-war debris before learning about nuclear detonations there. That is how dread works here. Not with screams, with paperwork, with boots, with men hauling an invisible past in ordinary trucks. The dome does not glow. It does not hiss. From a distance, it could be a cistern, or a bunker, or a forgotten roof. Runit Island itself was considered too contaminated with plutonium to be made habitable during the cleanup, too contaminated to live on, still close enough to visit, close enough for tides to lift around its edges and leave again. The Department of Energy published a report to Congress on climate change impacts to Runit Dome and U.S. obligations to Marshallese health and safety. Reports have clean margins. Islands do not. Salt creeps into seams. Roots lift concrete. Rain finds every place a builder trusted too much. ABC News reported in March that visible cracks now line the dome's outer shell amid rising concern over sea level rise. A crack is only a line until water arrives. Then it becomes a root. Then it becomes a question nobody wants open. ABC also described groundwater moving beneath the structure with the tides, a hidden exchange under the concrete cap, not a wave breaking over the top. Not yet. Something quieter. Water breathing through the island, under the lid, twice a day. Stand there long enough and the place seems to inhale. Softly, the lagoon pulls back. The stones click. The crack stays dark. The concern is the tidal groundwater could carry contamination from beneath the dome into the lagoons surrounding Runit. The word could does heavy lifting. It keeps officials careful. It keeps residents waiting. It keeps the water moving. U.S. authorities have said the dome is not in imminent danger of collapse, and that older testing remains the larger contamination source. That may be true. It may also be the kind of truth that does not comfort anyone who lives downwind of history. Nuclear Age Peace Foundation President Ivana Nicola-Hughes told ABC that rising seas and stronger storms could jeopardize the dome's integrity. Storms do not need permission. They do not read congressional reports. They arrive with water, pressure, debris, and the patience of erosion. Nuclear engineer Arjun Makajani told ABC there were already cracks in the dome in less than 50 years. Less than a lifetime. Less than the span between a young soldier with a shovel and an old man remembering what he was not told. Imagine being assigned cleanup duty on an island no one would later live on. The air hot. The soil wrong. The orders simple. The Inuiatak cleanup involved U.S. military personnel working after the nuclear testing era, moving contaminated material across the atoll. Some hazards have no smell, no color, no edge your hand can feel. So people build edges for them. At Runit, that edge became a concrete cap over a bomb crater filled with contaminated soil and debris. A lid is not the same as a vault. A lid can be lifted by time, cracked by heat, entered by water, and time has been working there in silence. Whisper, not fast, not slow enough to ignore. The National Museum of Nuclear Science and History notes Runit was too contaminated with plutonium to rehabilitate for habitation. If you share the story, consider reading primary sources first. Runit deserves care, not exaggeration. The truth is heavy enough. If this kind of slow history matters to you, a like or subscription helps others find the episode. No pressure. Just glad you are here. The unsettling part is not that the dome exists. It is that it was built for one century and left to face another. New reporting in 2026 described visible cracking, tidal groundwater movement, and renewed dispute over what the structure means now. A monument, some say. A hazard, others answer. The same concrete, the same tide, different distances from the water. The Department of Energy says it remains committed to U.S. obligations connected to the health and safety of the Marshallese people. Commitment is a word. Concrete is a material. Salt water is a force. On Runit, all three meet without ceremony. There is no locked door in this story. No guard turning a key. The thing being contained sits under open sky. Officials have argued the contamination already in the lagoon from historic testing is greater than any leakage from the dome itself. It is an awful comparison. Which water is worse? Which source matters more? Which wound gets counted because it is newest? Critics argue the dome was never meant as a fully sealed container, especially against sea level rise and stronger storms. A container can fail loudly, or it can fail like this. A little wetness. A small line. A tide that knows the schedule. Listen to the island at night. Pause. The palms scrape. The surf folds over itself. Somewhere beneath the cap, water changes rooms. Arjun Makhijani told ABC, the cracks have appeared in less than half a century, raising questions about long-term durability. Durability is easy to promise when the concrete is wet and fresh. Harder when the ocean keeps arriving with all its small tools. One approach is to treat Runit as a warning about buried hazards. Climate change may not create the past, but it can uncover it. Consider supporting groups that document nuclear test legacies and atomic veteran claims. Careful records may help people who were ignored for years. Because the deadliest places are not always hidden. Sometimes they are mapped, named, photographed, and still left to sit in the rain. Between Bikini and Aniatak, the United States conducted nuclear tests from 1946 through 1958. Tests end on paper, not in soil, not in bone, not in fish, reefs, rainwater, memory, or a crater capped with concrete. During cleanup, Runit was singled out as too contaminated for people to return and live there safely. That sentence should feel impossible. An island too dangerous for home, but safe enough to hold what others wanted gone. The tomb is not only a structure. It is a question poured in concrete. Who gets protected? Who gets remembered? Who gets the tide? More than 120,000 tons of contaminated material were placed in the cactus crater before the concrete cover was completed. Say that weight slowly. Soil, scrap, concrete, equipment. The remains of a program folded into a crater on a narrow island. ABC's reporting described tidal groundwater beneath the dome, meaning the island's water table rises and falls with the surrounding sea. There it is, softly, the part you cannot photograph from the air. The moving underneath. The tide, with nowhere to sign its name. If a claim about Runit sounds certain, slow down. The best sources tend to speak carefully, with measurements, limits, and unease. Certainty belongs to people far away. On an atoll, the Pacific is not background. It is wall, road, pantry, weather, grave. The Energy Department's climate report was sent to Congress in 2024 before the newest public attention to the cracks. But the tide did not wait for the report. It was already there, lifting in the dark, touching the underside, leaving no signature. One day, someone may decide the dome is stable enough. Someone else may stand at the edge and hear water under it. Both can be true in the way islands make truth complicated. The cap holds, the cracks widen, the sea comes back. Read the DOE report. Read Marshall Island's reporting. Listen to veterans and residents. Then ask what maintenance means when the ocean is rising. At low tide, the concrete dries pale. The crack remains. Small crabs move over it like nothing underneath can matter to them. Then the water returns. Quiet, regular, patient. It slides beneath the edge of the tomb, and the island keeps its mouth shut.